Chris and team. Okay, so here's my two Movi Pros. They were purchased a week or two apart. The Movi on the left is the one I made the first video in that shows the issue. Has the connects, my battery adapters. But anyways, my second brand new Movi Pro does the exact same thing. The only thing I have on the Movi Pro, Movi batteries, GH4, and for the purpose of this initial test, I have a Futaba receiver again. Short summary of this video. This issue is going to happen with the Futaba receiver and the Mimic on both gimbals. Anyway, so I'm going to turn on the Mimic. I'm going to replicate it with the Futaba controller first on this second Movi. So it's on. I'm going to test it. Everything is working well. So what we'll see here, we're going to go into the app first. See it? So, moral of the story, those numbers are not moving at all. They're maybe moving 100th of a degree, back and forth, rock steady. When you look at the gimbal, I'm not going to hold the camera still, but the gimbal right now is rock steady. So I'm going to go ahead, take the Futaba controller, put it into a spin. And I'm going to let it spin for, I don't know, a minute or two. Okay, so now I'm going to stop the spin. Set it up so it faces the camera. And as if you can see right now, if you're looking down, the gimbal is drifting clockwise. And it will continue drifting clockwise forever. It will not stop. I'll explain it. There's another little caveat to this I've realized after doing a million tests, but I'll show this at the end of the video. So, going back over to the app, as you can see, the Movi does not detect that it is spinning right now. All the numbers are holding constant, yet the gimbal is spinning. So obviously if I look down now, what's going to happen, just like before, it was spinning this way, now it's going to spin in that roll axis the same way, and the drift's going to go way off. You can see this. And it's drifting way off. Okay. So, test 2. I'm going to turn off the Movi. I'm going to unplug the Futaba receiver, just for the ultimate pair tests. I'll turn off my Futaba transmitter. I'm going to boot up the Movi. So it's obviously in majestic mode right now. It's level. It's not going to drift, obviously, because it's in majestic mode. But now I'm going to go over to the Mimic. So the Mimic's on a drill, and I'm just going to use the drill to spin it slowly because it's difficult to spin it by the antenna. So I'm going to boot up as still as possible. I'm going to activate Mimic. And anyways, as you can see, the Mimic's working. So now with the Mimic, or the drill, sorry, I'm going to put this in a slow spin. Okay, as we can see, Mimic spinning fairly slow. And the Movi spinning, so I'm going to let this sit for a couple minutes like the other test. Okay, so I'm going to stop the Mimic. Bring it around. Okay, so the Mimic is perfectly stationary. And this is where things get really interesting and extremely frustrating. Essentially, by doing this test, all I did was figure out that A, there's an issue with the Movi itself, and B, the Mimic has a drift issue as well. So, if you can see here, I'm going to start by showing the gimbal. Right now the gimbal is drifting, if you're looking down, it's drifting counterclockwise. And here's where it gets interesting because the app's frozen right now. So, complicating matters, as you will see now, the yaw angle is actually rapidly changing at, it's over a degree a second right now. So intuitively you'd think that would probably explain why the Movi is turning, but that also points out that the issue is actually coming from the Mimic, and for some reason the Mimic must be giving the gimbal an input to make it spin. Now obviously it shouldn't. I don't know why it's drifting like that. Sensors don't just drift like that, so I don't know. You guys can explain why that's happening. So that's another issue I've uncovered. But just to isolate the issue now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my Futaba transmitter, or receiver, sorry. And turn on my controller. So it's in its lock mode right now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the Mimic, or just put it to off. So this is going to prove that the issue is still happening even with the Mimic. And essentially the issue isn't, there's two issues. One, the Mimic is causing it to drift, but B, the gimbal is drifting itself. So this is isolating the gimbal itself. So, put the camera down. You will see that the gimbal is drifting clockwise right now. And then just like before, now that we've isolated the issue and we've taken the Mimic out of the equation, or the Mimic drift out of the equation, the numbers are holding still again. They're not moving. So it's not detecting the gimbal drifting now. But anyways, so here's another little thing that I figured out. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, the gimbal will continue drifting forever. It won't stop. It'll continue going counterclockwise. But what's interesting is, so when I look down now, because it's spinning counterclockwise, it's going to drift. I can't remember now. I'm looking backwards. I think it's, I'll just point to it. So it's rolling this way. It's not drifting as much as normal right now, so it's kind of hard to see. But you can see that it's off right now. But here's where it gets interesting. So eventually it'll hit a peak. So right now, let's say it probably went to about 4 degrees off. And then I guess what happens is it starts fighting the accelerometer direction. And I don't know what's happening, but I guess somehow in the calculation, the accelerometers are resetting this drift. Because it's hard to see now, but the roll is actually coming back now to proper level. And what's interesting now is if I just wait long enough, sometimes this will take a minute or two. If I look up, the roll is definitely off, but the drift has actually pretty much stopped. There's very, very minor drift, but essentially by looking down and holding it for long enough, somehow the accelerometer is resetting or zeroing out this drift. I don't know, something in the calculation. And if I look down for long enough, it'll actually completely stop. So I don't know, guys, I'm completely out of ideas now. Please help. Thank you.